What's up, you guys? I am so excited to be here with the dope dealer that's now the hope dealer.
Amen.
Yep, that's right. I love that part of your bio statement. And I am so excited for you guys to meet my new friend, Josh. We met a couple of months ago in Orlando at the U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce event, and immediately just hit it off. One, because we had a lot of friends in common that also share in the chiropractic space. And additionally, because we both love Jesus. I'm all for dealing hope all day. I need a hat just like yours. And he also has a knack for worship. And I just got done with a worship event called When Women Worship. And it was 2 days of nonstop worship with the most high energy women you could possibly imagine. And I thought I was going to lose my voice. And so thank God I didn't, because now we're here to talk about it. But Josh, I'm so excited to go just through your story, your doctor journey, your the fact that you have 7 children. We could go so many different directions right now. But I want to hear the come to Jesus story first, and then I'll start learning and asking all the other questions.
That's so awesome. I'm so honored to be here, Tamara, and that we got to meet. And really, it's like full circle, this Jesus story thing, to meeting people who have Jesus stories just like yourself and getting to do all this stuff. But, I grew up in church, and we went to church every Sunday. And so God's always been a part of I'm so thankful my parents took me to church every Sunday. But just like a lot of us, I had to figure it out on my own. And so went through high school and college and kind of living life the way I wanted to live it. And always been the center of attention type of guy. And but used to be for myself, right? For selfish reasons. And always the life of the party, if you would. And for a long time, the party was a different type of party, than what we throw now. And so through college and things, I always being the center of attention, life of the party, captain of the college football team type thing, and all-American athlete, kind of always that on stage type of thing. I didn't realize how selfish it was and how much it was messing with my life and other people's lives until I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia. And all the sports were done, and all the, it was time to get serious. People weren't in the party life anymore. They were becoming doctors, and starting their lives and getting married and having kids. And I wasn't there yet. And I, basically hit this rock bottom spot that unfortunately so many of us have to hit in our lives. And so got to a point where I didn't have anybody to be the life of the party for anymore. And I didn't have anybody looking at me as the center of attention. And I got to a point that said, man, what's this life all about? And thankfully, there were some people that came into my life at that point who said, hey, man, you should come to this businessmen's meeting. And they're really successful businessmen in Atlanta, Georgia. They make a lot of money. They drive nice cars. Do you want to come? And I said, yeah, I need to be there because I want to be successful like that. And so they invited me at 6:30 in the morning on a Thursday morning to this businessmen's meeting. And I promise this has to do with what the question you just asked me. But it was a Bible study. They didn't tell me it was a Bible study. And these dudes did drive like very nice cars, Lexuses. One had a Rolls Royce. I mean, these guys wore business suits. And I was a first-year chiropractic student thinking, man, yeah, I want to be like that. And here they were talking about this Jesus guy, and not just like I go to church on Sundays, man. They were talking about how Jesus changed their life and how their whole life revolved around that, blah, blah. And I thought, man, I don't know who these guys are, but they make a lot of money, so I can hang around them. And you know how it is. You start hanging around people like that, they start to rub off on you. And so these same guys asked me to come to, they said, hey, you want to come to a free concert on a Tuesday night? I said, I love music, always did. Music's always been a big part of my life. So they invited me to a concert, free concert. I went. And it was a worship night. And I'd never really been to a worship night like that. I'd only heard, maybe a couple of hymns sung on Sundays or something like that. I wasn't into Jesus music, but it was a worship night. And I made the comment to these guys at that worship night. I said, man, if church was like this, I'd go every Sunday. Because I hadn't been going to church in many years, that I didn't really have a use for that anymore. And they said, we'll see you on Sunday. And so then I got invited by the same group of guys to a chiropractic conference, because as successful chiropractic people, I went on a Friday night I can remember. And there was a guy named Dr. Pete Sulak there, a mutual friend of ours. And this was 15 years ago. and he's saying the same message still today. But he wasn't talking about chiropractic. This guy was talking about Jesus. And he was saying, man, talking about, he gave his salvation message at a chiropractic conference, so a business space, and they had worship there. And the rest is history. I mean, my life changed in that moment. All of the old partying, that when I just read the scroll at the beginning of this video where it said dope dealer to hope dealer,
Yeah.
I had get a little choked up, because it's like, man, my life could have been so much different if Jesus hadn't interrupted it at that point, right? And if somebody like, the people who invited me to those places and Dr. Pete weren't messengers, right? Weren't saying it loud and proud, my life could be completely different. And I wouldn't be wearing a hat like this today,
Yeah.
But
So
Jesus
good.
interrupted my life like that, and the rest literally is history. Like, radically transformed, threw all the party stuff out of my life and said, we're going after Jesus. And then that's how worship became such a big part of it, because it changed my life in that way. That free concert, and the ways that God used those things to interrupt my life. That's how we do it now, and the ways we practice.
It's so rich. And there's so many like little loopholes that we could talk about. I first started laughing, not because you weren't getting to the question, but because I know what happens at 6 a.m. with successful people.
Yeah.
Because most of the other successful people who are not gathering, maybe they're going to the gym, maybe they're doing something to feed their own ego or time or mind. But when they're gathering, I know it's because God is there. And so that always gets me excited.
Yeah.
And then additionally, just the fact that they just kept inviting you, right? Like invitations, you can totally close the door. You could say no, but you saw this exterior thing that had been presented to you as good, and yet they had something great to offer you. And so there is a hook in switch in that. There is a bait and switch in that, which is why I think it's beautiful that marketplace ministry is such a profound endeavor at this state in I think ever bet before. Like I know, Billy Graham mentioned it's going to be the next biggest revival like many years ago, but I have never seen what has been transpiring in marketplace. And it's a huge part of your testimony. It's a huge part of my testimony. And so it gets me so excited for people. I want to know in this journey, specifically around worship, at what point did Randee, your beautiful bride, come into play?
It's funny, Randee and I met in college, so undergrad. We were both on the track team, but then because of the lifestyle that I lived, it was kind of one of those things like, yeah, whatever, she's just another girl. And I just told a young lady in my office that we were mentoring right now who's looking for the right person. I said, the way I knew Randee was the one is because she was the one who never left me, even though my life was jacked up, right?
Wow.
Kind of like Jesus. And so in chiropractic school, once I got saved, I remember, it was a matter of months that I turned around and said, hey, I'm ready to get serious. And she was like, what happened to you? Like, where did you go? Who stole Josh, And so I said, well, Jesus happened. And she was always a good girl. She was in a Christian sorority and college and stuff. Why she hung around me, I have no idea, but I'm so thankful that God brought her into my life. And so we got married like 6 months after I got saved. In fact, we both got baptized together. The week before we got married, we were baptized together in a muddy lake in Georgia with all of our friends, all those guys from that Bible study. And from that chiropractic conference, they were a part of our baptism the week before we got married, like 6 months after I got saved. And honestly, God's timing was so perfect and all that. And so here we are. She's going to get mad at me. I think we're 14 years this year.
I won't tell her. Congrats. That's incredible. 14 years and 7 kids later. Yeah. That is such an endeavor. So talk to us about how your faith journey as one has been an integral part of your parenting. And we'll get into the chiropractic side and how you're taking your message into the marketplace every day. I think it's such a profound experience to be able to actually lay hands on people, not just from a religiosity perspective, but from a healing modality, which is what you offer. But let's talk about the home front first, because I don't think any of that could happen if the home and the heart aren't secure first.
Yeah, man, it's so true. It's such our foundation to us. so getting saved and baptized together laid the foundation. And then, we started the practice together. She worked in the practice with me. We had one kid when we first started, Jonah, who will be 13 on Sunday. And so we started together. She was working in the office for a long time, side by side. Like, we just felt like this was our mission together, to tell people about the hope in Christ, but also hope in health and things. And so about baby number 4, then I fired her from the office. She
You're like, no
willingly
more.
was fired, yeah, because she wanted to. I stopped and asked her the question, "Hey, we're always doing my thing. What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to raise our kids and do the homestead thing." So we have Willows Homestead now, and
So
she
good.
teaches our kids how to live off the land and other people and other moms, and she ministers to them through that. But it's always been us together. We do that together. We do the office together. We do the worship. Even though she wouldn't be on here, I don't think. But
Wow,
she's
that's like
not a
my
stage
husband.
person.
Yeah.
She's not a stage person. She wants to be in the back, but we're a tag team, and really we go to conferences together. We're excited to come in November and just do that stuff together, because we are one. Even though we don't have the same gifts and talents, we still do that all as a team.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes up for such the expression, just like of our weaknesses, right? They make up our strengths. My husband's the same way, though he has been jumping on the mic a little bit more. And I'm like, look at you. It's actually like so sexy. I'm like, babe, this is good. You need to do this more often. He's like, I will, if that's your response. But thinking about the fact that they also, just like we are, we're constantly becoming. And me speaking on a mic, I've been doing it since I was so little. You've been singing probably since you were so little too. But when you get to do it for the Lord, it's like everything changes. The one thing remaining the one thing, which is ultimately Him, we get to be messengers. And I think our marriages are one of the biggest missing messages in society at large. And so when we get to do it, and you guys have done it since the beginning, Gary and I did not for a long time. I was running my way, he was running his way. And the more we did that, the further apart we were, until we were so apart that we thought we were literally going to divorce and lose our home and lose everything that we'd established. And so God was the one who was that third cord, and He brought us back together. But processing this through the lens of the marketplace, and you guys being able to establish that in multiple different arenas, how has your faith in the hope of health and the hope of healing really established your chiropractic? Because I just love the field of chiropractic. Is so interesting to me, and I use it often, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, it is to me too. Obviously, to me, it's the most real way, biblical way that we see health, other than miraculous healing, right? It's laying hands on the sick and watching them recover, right? And it's in telling people the message. I tell people this day after day after day. You are beautifully and wonderfully created in the image of God. You're not junk. God doesn't create junk. You're made to heal. You're not made to just fall apart and get old and be decrepit and crawl into the grave. Moses was 120 years old with fire in his eye and vigor in his bones. And that's what you're made to be, right? It wasn't just special for Moses. That's all of us. God has created us for a purpose. And really, I love to tell them this. They come in and say, my back hurts and my neck hurts, or those kind of things. And I say, but what's it stopping you from doing that God has created you to do? And then the question, typically they look at me kind of funny, like, well, I don't know what God created me to do, because they don't even know if God exists or something like that. And I said, well, whether you know it or not, you were created specifically for something. And this season and the next season, as you age, not just to retire and live a good life on the beach. You're created to do something. And so if you don't feel good, if your health is failing, you're not able to do those things. And that's a saddest story in history. And so how do we increase your health so you can do all that God has called you to do, because you're created to do that? And it bridges the gap between this message of, wait a second, if I'm created, there must be a creator. And if there's a creator, who is he? And why does he care so much about me, that there's a purpose for my life? It's not just this thing. Anyway. And so we get to start to speak into people's lives, these little things, and sometimes bridge the gap between a person who's a complete atheist that comes into the office because their back hurt, right? Or because they are on 13 medications by the age of 50, like the average American. And we're telling them there's a better way. And by the way, not only that, like, there's something so much more. You're made for more. My favorite message to tell people.
It's so good. And I wish, and when I was in middle school, starting my chiropractic journey because of some sports industries with gymnastic injuries, not industries, sports injuries, that my chiropractor would have been like you. Like that would have changed the trajectory of my life. And the biggest thing is to know that that doesn't mean the moment that they come in, they're radically saved, and
Yeah.
it's a seed. And then they
Yeah.
get to watch the way you live your life. And then they get to see your kiddos come to the office, and you see your family in pictures on the wall, and they ask about all of these other things, maybe the crazy hat that you have on. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that, right? And that's
Yeah.
what people need more of. That's what those guys in that Bible study did for you, which I think is just so profound. They weren't shoving it down your face. They weren't trying to indoctrinate you, as often
Yeah.
people think that the Christian, experience is an indoctrination. I'm like, we get indoctrinated by so many more things that are intentionally indoctrinating us. I don't have to indoctrinate you to tell you about a God that loves you so much, a father that created you for such a time as this. So I just honor the way that you have done it so gingerly, but also without, it's not without, like, it's with effort, but not with push, right? Which I think is so profound.
Yeah, I think that's it. We get people all the time that come in that know who we are a lot of times. Like our message is out there by now. We live in a small community,
Yeah.
and they know what I mean. Gosh, I wear the shirts and I wear the hats. My head is the biggest billboard I have.
Yeah,
Like I
so
got a
good.
big head, and it's a billboard. And people all the time are asking like, "Hey, what's that hope dealer? What's that?" Let me tell you.
So good.
But my hope is, I tell my team this all the time. I think it was like Saint Francis of Assisi, right? That said, um, you know, preach the gospel at all times, use words when necessary, right? That'll, I love that. Like, I hope I don't have to say the words or even wear them for people to see the truth of the gospel in my life,
Yeah, you've got some clients on here right now, even who are just like, my brother in Christ, love you, Josh. He's my chiropractor. I'm like, that's so awesome. And to know that your community supports you, thrives alongside you. And I know for me, one of the biggest words that's connected to the chiropractic industry, which is something I didn't ever put two and two together around, was this idea of mind, body, spirit alignment.
Yeah,
Everyone's pushing for balance, but the goal, even for your profession, is to create alignment so that we can be better statured, better postured for us to go and do the good works and the glorious deeds in which He's called us to. And so, talk to me about maybe different parts, even as you were becoming more like the Dr. Joshua that you are today. What was it like to write your mind away from what you previously knew and to continue to lay down what the enemy can try to do connected to
yeah,
your big mission? Because you have so many things at work, y'all. He mentioned the homestead. He mentioned the chiropractic office. He mentioned worship. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here shortly because that's a huge endeavor.
yeah.
But talk to me about how you've been renewing your mind and what that process of sanctification has been like, even from a body health perspective personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, I make this analogy in chiropractic, when we're making corrections, when we're adjusting somebody, it's not a one time, put it in the microwave, everything's done and you're ready, ready. It's time and repetition, time and repetition. Health takes time and repetition, right? It didn't come in a day, doesn't happen in a day, doesn't leave in a day. It takes time and repetition.
Mm.
And it's no different in our walk, like in the sanctification of our mind, our body, all those things. It's time and repetition. It's, yes, it happens once because of what Jesus did for us, but then it's a process as we're walking through this life that, man, today I learned something. I got to get, like, this is out of alignment. I got to improve this. I got to get this
Yeah.
better. And so little by little, we're making these corrections, but the end goal is that, hey, by the time we're done, we have this beautifully and wonderfully moving and healthy individual. It was created to be that way, but then something got it out of alignment,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so, and we're constantly warring against those things, mind, body, spirit, all those things. In chiropractic, while it may seem really physical in nature, like we're adjusting somebody's spine with our hands and, it's a physical thing, there's actually so much more that goes into it mentally, emotionally too, that science is showing an adjustment does so much more than just move a bone right to left, right? And the one thing, though, that I tell my staff all the time, though, the most important thing that we have to do outside of laying hands on the sick and watching them recover is that that person could be in complete alignment, eat all the right vegetables and take all the right supplements and move correctly and all the things. But if they don't have Jesus in their life, they're still the sickest person I've ever met. And so we
Wow.
have to be able to give them the full package.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I'm thinking through how your worship has been a huge part of this entire process, and whether anyone in your practice has heard you sing or not. I'm sure you sing to your own beat of your drum and tunes while you're inside the office even,
Oh
but
yeah.
I've gotten some amazing lyrical opportunities to hear as you just send me text messages from time to time. And I'm like, is he in the shower right now? Like, where is he singing this? The acoustics are always on point. I get so excited to stop everything that I'm doing. And I've learned, because the first time I didn't know to expect it. And now I know if I get a text message from you, I'm like, oh, this isn't something I do when the kids are talking to me, or like, hold on, let me listen to Mr. Josh really quick. I'm like, no. I need to go get quiet before the Lord, and then I'll press play, because your words have such weight to them based in your testimony. So talk to us about what worship anyway means to you, and what that movement has really become.
Sure, you just gave away my secrets. I send these singing grams to people, and
Singing
I
grams,
do,
I love it.
yeah, singing grams, and they're meant to do that, just encourage people, change their day. You can be arguing with your kids, your husband, and then you listen to one of those, and it's like, oh, how can I be mad now? You know, hopefully that's what
Yeah.
happens. But I send those to people all over the country because that's just what the Lord told me to do, to encourage people, even though it's goofy. There's no music in the background. There's nothing. It's just a
I love
cappella,
it.
right? And that really is what worship anyway is about, right?
Yeah.
It's really about, listen, I like sound and lights. I like good sound. We just upgraded to some amazing speakers that we take into the streets, and I love the good rich sound. I love that it travels for street blocks, you know, and I love that stuff. But if I was just in my bathroom or my shower, or if I was, you know, in my car or whatever it may be, I'm going to sing the same way. I'm going to, you know, respond in the same way, because it's not about all the flash and lights. And what if really worship anyway? We started doing this worship thing because my life was changed by it. And I called a few friends, and the Lord just said, hey, you're going to start a worship movement. And I argued for a while and said, no, I don't play any instruments, God. And I don't lead worship. And it was really one of those things like, well, I didn't ask you to do that. I said, I wanted you to lead the movement. And I've learned that over the years, right? And so instead, he's got us surrounded me with these amazing musicians. I just had this 80-year-old lady in my office today telling me, she came to our last event. She said, man, the musicians that are surrounding you are some of the best I've ever heard. I've been to lots of concerts. I've never heard anything like what you guys have. It wasn't just the musicians, it was the whole message, right? It was it was the spirit of the atmosphere, not just the songs. And so the musicians are, you know, have surrounded me, and the people who do sound, and the people who do lights, and the people that do all those things. But if we didn't have any of those things, in fact, we got rained out one time. One of my favorite memories of worship anyway, in the last 8-9 years we've been doing it, we got rained out. We were outside this barn venue, and it got rained out. Everyone, half the crowd left. And we said, you know what? We're just going to go inside this barn. Not everybody can fit, but whoever wants to fit, we're going to shove inside this barn, and we're just going to worship anyway. And it was in the middle of COVID, so there's a lot of anyway. And so we go inside. We turned over these trash cans, these Rubbermaid trash cans, and my drummers just started beating on these things. I can remember we sang "Honey in the Rock," you know, and with nothing. We just started harmonizing and singing at the top of our lungs, and people were just, I mean, lives where you could see them like, there's something going on here. And I think God honors that. It's not about, hey, will you worship me when the sound is right, when you can hear your in-ears correctly, all the mixers are good, you know, when everything is, when you have that, all the right stuff, or will you just worship me because of me, you know, for who I am? And that's what worship anyway really is about. And we go to all the places where people wouldn't normally worship too. It's about the places, the people, right? The heart. So we were just in a beer tent at our county fair on Monday, and we're going to go to two more county fairs here. And we go to the middle of streets, we go to barns, we go to houses, we go to living rooms. And the only place we don't go a lot is churches, mainly because God has called us to go to the highways and byways and bring people to the churches, but he hasn't called us to necessarily go to the churches, you know? So it's a really amazing I mean, I love to do it. Yeah, you're right. I sing in my office. People get to hear me sing all the time.
I'm sure.
I mean, if I'm not singing and something's wrong, I'm stressed out, it's a bad
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
I'm not listening to what I'm supposed to listen. I'm not worshiping anyway, right? It's a
Right.
convicting
That's
thing all the
good.
time.
That's so good. I'm
I get
thinking of
called
go.
yeah, so I was gonna say I get called out on it all the time by people like, "Hey, doc, why don't you worship anyway?" I'm
Ah,
like,
it's so good. You're like,
touche."
"Oh, you're right. You saw me today." Like, you feel seen in that moment. It's a really good reminder. Even as you're explaining that one time with the rain and the barn, I was at a conference this past weekend and 200 people there, all the lights, camera, action. And 2 weeks prior to when I sat with the Lord, since I was going to be speaking at it, I'm like, "Lord, what is this conference going to be about? What is it that you want me to share?" And he immediately downloaded vocation, volume, and voice. And I was like, I've never put those three V's together. I like it. I love a good alliteration. Tell me more. Got into the Bible, went to Luke 1. Highly encourage you guys to look to Luke 1, the whole chapter from Zechariah and Mary and the experiences with Gabriel and what happened with John the Baptist and Jesus, specifically under those three words of vocation, voice, and volume. So I had prepared this message, and I'm going into an arena that I don't often get to share in, which was 99 point, I'll say there was 10 white chicas in the midst of a bunch of sisters. Okay. And so I don't get to go there often. That's not an invitation that I often receive. And so I was so excited about it because they were sisters that were a part of my journey home. They were my aunties and my grandmas during the time where my own family rejected me. And so it literally felt like walking into a place that was like home. And we started worshiping. And I'm telling you, they worship unlike any white church you've ever been to. You can't even imagine it until you've been there. And so it is going off in this place. And people are screaming and yelling and jumping and running, and flags are rolling. And it's just profound, and the lights and the sound go out. And it was called When Women Worship. And there was not a beat that was taken for us to stop our worship. And we just worshiped anyway. And I had no idea that I was going to get to have this conversation with you today. So it was just so perfectly profound and positioned to see what happened. That was my favorite, most pivotal part of the entire conference because it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. And yeah, sure, the lights came on eventually and people were cheering when that happened. But at the end of the day, I was thinking about how much heaven might sound like this, because at the end of the day, our voices are the melodic expression to God. Our sound is the thing that he gave us. It is the instrument. So I always say, I don't play any instruments, but I got vocal cords that will do it for me, right? Like, I don't need to know how to play piano. I want to know, but I don't need to know. And so
Amen.
I can be with you in that moment because I just experienced that this past weekend. And I just hope that more people realize, like, the undone experience is often the most doing that God will do.
That's so good. I love that story. Like, so good. And watch, I think there's times that honestly the enemy will try to just cut the power, right? Cut the
For sure.
sound and try to shut the voice off, right? That doesn't make the enemy happy by any means.
Mhm.
If it's for the Lord, at least, that's
Yeah.
not, where you are literally shaking the walls down. And when we have that happen at our events, it's frustrating. It is on the
Sure.
inside. You're like, oh, we wanted this to be perfect. And that
Yeah.
person, we had that happen our fall worship 2 years ago. Just as the preacher, we had a preacher come and give the gospel message. And just as he got up there, boom, it wasn't even during a loud moment. Like, the sound went out,
Mm.
all the breakers blew. And he just put the mic down and started just yelling his message.
Yeah.
There's a couple thousand people there. And I gotta be honest with you, what happened was everyone wasn't really kind of paying attention, because when it gets kind of quiet and the
Sure.
music stops, they were kind of just, but then when the sound went out, everyone was like, what's happening? And they looked to the stage and he just starts to and he had the entire audiences. And if he would have stopped, it would have just kind of been whatever. Instead, I watched God turn that around for good. And maybe when half the crowd would have been paying attention, the entire crowd was paying attention to hear the message of Jesus
Praise
Christ.
God.
And so
So good.
when we worship anyway, it gives God an opportunity to have more glory, more praise, more glory, and more attention towards him.
Yeah, I love that. And it was like on day 2 of that experience, and I don't know how long you've ever done one of your concerts, but there was a moment where I looked at one of the fellow speakers, and I had already spoken at this point, and I don't know after you're done with worship if you're like, I'm beat, like, because you've
Mm,
just done a pouring out of everything that God has given you, and you just feel drained, like totally like,
yep.
I just want to crawl into bed. And we looked at each other because we were at that place and we realized, oh my gosh, we're about to go into another 45-minute worship set. Like we thought it was over. I'm like, but we are at When Women Worship. And so it can't end on a speaker. It has to end on worship. And we kind of just looked at each other in like this depravity of like, oh my gosh, I'm starving. I have all of these
Yeah.
fleshly needs in this moment. Sleep would be great. And they started, and I cemented in that moment. I'm like, I'm going to, again, going back to this phrase, I'm going to worship you anyway, Lord. But it was like, I'm going to move past what my body wants to do in this moment because you deserve all the glory. And he's literally done so many times in my life where I have been full of energy. He's shown up. And so many times that I've had absolutely nothing to give, he still shows up. So why would I not be a replica of my creator and want to do the same thing? So I started jumping. I was sweating by the time. And she was like, wow, what came over you? And I was like, he's worthy of it all. Like he's worthy of
Mm,
my exhaustion.
amen.
He's worthy of our voice. He's worthy of the fact that I really need a re-deodorant supply at this moment that I don't have. And he doesn't even
Oh,
care because the sound is the aroma he's sensing, right?
yeah.
So
Praise God.
I just think if we do it longer, and I encourage someone who's listening, like worship, not just anyway, but worship longer. Like go
Yeah.
beyond the 15-minute set that you prepared.
Oh,
Go beyond the 5-minute prayer, window that you created for yourself. Just go in for it and see what God will do on the other side.
man, I loved that is so true. Amen. Thanks for encouraging me to that. Go longer.
Go
I had
longer.
I had this older lady ask me today because she came on Monday. She said, "Man, you guys like fall over when you're done. You guys don't stop moving. You're just like excited the whole time. Even during the slow songs, like you're excited, you know?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm exhausted, but I would do it again. And I would
There
do it
it is.
again, and I would do it
Yes.
again because I love it. It's not something we get paid to do. That's the amazing thing. Like my
Yeah.
entire team doesn't get paid a dime. We just love to worship. We just love to see people's lives transformed, and we love music. God's given us Davidic hearts. You know, we do love
Mhm.
music and good music, but more than anything, we love to see lives transformed. If I was doing country music or rap music, nothing. I like those styles. I used to listen to them a lot. But if
Mhm.
that's what I was singing, I would be exhausted all the
Yeah.
time and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't, I'm done, you know.
Yeah.
But something about doing it for the Lord, right? Something about it's way bigger purpose than what people. You can clap your hands for me, but that's not the reason I'm going to continue to do it or not do it. You know?
Yeah, that's so good. That applause. I mean, we can live for the applause for sure. And I think people get, in that place of pride and that position of guilt, and ultimately regret because they position that as the
Yeah.
primary,
Yep.
and they forget for the one who they don't put him in the right place, right? Like God deserves to be where God is honored. And I think about that even with your home, like how much fun worship must be in your home with that many little ones around, just like hooting and hollering and dancing. And those diaper dances are the best. They're so
Oh yeah.
cute.
Oh yeah.
It's so fun to be able to do it from that place and then also to be able to do it from a stage.
You know, our living room is definitely a worship dance party all the time. Now, my 13-year-old on Sunday, he's at that too cool for school stage.
Yeah.
I don't question his heart, but I get it. He's, 13 years old, dad, that's not cool anymore.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I still got an 18-month-old who's just
Yeah.
learning, just learned to walk and his hands in the air and he's kind of that sway thing, in his
Yes.
diaper. And oh, love that. And you know what? It'll come back.
Yeah.
It'll come back for that 13-year-old too.
Yeah.
I look like more like the 18-month-old in the diaper. Not exactly, but
Yes,
when,
it's so
when I'm
good. That's
worshiping.
a great image. I love it. I'm so excited for the region of where you are. We're in the coastal Virginia Beach area, and I am so passionate about our region, about our city, about what the Lord can do here. And then when I get to talk to people in other areas, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go there. Like, that sounds amazing. I want to be there with the thousands of people in the barn. That sounds awesome. And yet to know that like God hasn't forsaken any region. So wherever you're listening from, you could be overseas. You know, this is a very popular podcast in the Philippines and the Bahamas. I
Amen.
love that it's in all these places
Amen.
I've yet to even step my feet onto, that you can worship anywhere just as much as you can worship anyway.
Oh, that's amazing. You know, I think we should have a heart, just like you said, for our local area, for our community. We call it community. Community can mean a lot of different things, but having a heart for our community is one of the reasons that I don't really, I would love to come. I'm going to come to Virginia, right? And
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
worship with Virginians, and I want to
Yeah.
worship with people from all over. We do actually travel a lot. We went out of state for the first time this year to do that, to Michigan. But
Epic.
as much as that's cool, that's not my heart. My heart
Mm,
is, yeah, if God calls us and opens a door there, there's a purpose for that. Somebody needs to hear the message there. But more importantly, we're local people. My entire
yeah.
team is within a 20-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now. And so they're people that are local. You're going to see us in Walmart. You're going to
So
see us. You won't see me in McDonald's, but you'll see
good.
you'll
We'll have
see
a
some
health
of these,
conversation
right,
after this.
right. Unless I'm trying to get people saved in their health and for Jesus. But you're going to see us. And because we care about the people, right? We care
Yeah.
about the souls. We care about the lives. We care about the community. We care about making an impact, not just to promote our name and to promote, our office or to promote,
Yeah.
those kind of things. It is because we care about the people. We're called to do this right here. So I
Yeah.
love that you say, I have a heart here. And people can do that anywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they should do it anywhere.
Yeah. And to know that like it's like that the view of the globe where like a light turns on and another light turns on and another light
Yeah.
turns on, like to have God's perspective of the sound that's coming back at him as he is just magnifying love towards us. I want to be a part of that light. I want to be a part of that as often as I possibly can. And it's the nations at large that he's coming back for. It's not one specific region, it's not one specific city. And I
Yeah.
totally get that. But we can get so focused on the local that we can forget about the regional, the national, the global. And that's not God's heart. So if people are still only looking at the war, in Israel and Gaza and Russia and all of that stuff that's happening, and they're just like,
Yeah.
that's the holy city. I'm like, no, you're the holy people. And so every city is holy because you're there. And God's not going to leave or forsake you in that regard. And so it just empowers me in that concept of I want to get some swag with worship anyway and anywhere.
Yeah, come on.
In your car, in the shower, in McDonald's, we don't care. Just do it. Do it,
Yeah.
do it, do it.
So good. I think that's what you just said is key too, right? So I used to say, we don't go anywhere else. We'll just stay right here. We went to Michigan this year because God said, but I want to show somebody in
Mm,
Michigan something so that they can do it in Michigan, not so that you
yeah.
can, right?
Yeah, the
I say this all the time.
reputation.
We're not a band. We don't go on tour. Like, this isn't our job. This is our calling. And
Yeah.
so, but if we can go and equip somebody or encourage them, this is really what it's about that multiplication
Yeah.
and the scale for us isn't scaling so that we can sell more albums or something
Yeah.
like that. The scale for us is scaling the kingdom so that
Mhm.
more people are doing what we are doing that are called to do that. I guarantee God has called somebody else to do that somewhere
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
in their
It's so
community or
good.
somewhere around the world.
Can you say one final thing for me and just share from your lens? Because oftentimes when I'm teaching or sharing, I'm talking about this idea of businessry, right? And that our business is our ministry is our
Amen.
business. But a mass majority of people aren't necessarily operating in the way that you are, where they have their for-profit or their nonprofit, which is what we've established under our
Mhm.
umbrella, and help them understand that it's not an either or, to help them hear that like, yes, there's a portion of what you do that is completely for free, but there is monetization that is happening to forward the movement. And that's where a lot
Yeah.
of people are like, but Jesus was poor. And I'm like, no, he wasn't. Like, he was not, never did it ever say that he was poor. And so helping people conceptualize that our missions, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit, ultimately become movements for him. But that it's okay for there to be a fund and a funneling that is happening to said experience.
This was maybe the hardest lesson I've had to learn doing this whole
Mm.
thing: office, business, homestead, family thing, big family.
Yeah.
Because I used to think, well, we just have to give it all away because that's what good people do, and people who love Jesus. Jesus gave it all away, for us. But then I realized quickly that if I gave it all away, I would have nothing for my family. I would have nothing to go and do more of
Yeah.
this, where people's lives need changed. And so I had to learn the hard way over the last 15 years of business that, hey, actually, no, God has blessed us with this ability to be able to create wealth in order to bless others even more. Not
Mm.
not just to give it all away so we bless a few, but to create wealth, to continue to bless people now and for generations to come. And so we are still learning that, but it's absolute. Like, I love the fact that, listen, right now I'm actually helping to pastor a church. Well, I don't need to have any kind of income necessarily from that, because of how God has blessed me in my business. Because this church that needs some help right now doesn't have the funds to do that. Hey, I would just come and do
Right.
that because God has blessed me enough to create wealth over here
Mm.
in order to do this thing. The same with worship anyway. I'm so thankful that God has given all of my team ways to create wealth and a lifestyle so that they can simply do the ministry side of things and aren't suffering in the meantime, right? That they're
Yes.
actually
Yes.
beyond blessed.
Mm.
That's the kingdom. It's not while we are still the most humble and while we still will give the shirt off our back to anybody, right? God gives us the means to buy more shirts to give to more
Yes.
people.
Yes, it's so good. And that's ultimately to hear that style and that lens of multiplication, because I think that's where a lot of people can get tripped up. And one of the things that I had to work through in my own money story and my own understanding of how does this work, because I was for 10 years an entrepreneur, not doing it for other people, not doing it for the Lord primarily. That when I came back into establishing business 3 years after a hiatus, where actually went to a year-long worship school as the first calling that God called me to. First time I ever heard the voice of God was, "You're going to do this." And I was like, that's not what I do. And he's like, "But that's what you're going to do." And for a year, understanding worship. So to catalyze business out of a place of worship and to know who it's for changes everything. But my money story was linked towards not being trustworthy. And so when God got a hold of my heart and he started to reinstill integrity inside of me, when he started to reinstill the fact that he trusted me, it was actually years in where God had me standing in this vision. It was so beautiful, Josh, of just this empty field. And it was like perfectly graded, right? It had all, you would know all the lingo with your homesteading. It had all of the plot lines were already
Mhm.
prepared. And it was this perfect diameter. It was exactly what I could see. It was just fields beyond that. And I'm sitting there on this bench and I'm looking out and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to plant? I don't know what to plant here. And the Lord was sitting next to me. Jesus was sitting next to me and he just said, "Plant what you want." And I thought, what? You want me to choose? I get to choose? Well, you know me, I'm going to plant a bunch of wildflowers. They're going to be every color of the rainbow. I'm like, well, I also need to have harvest so that I can feed people. And I had all this abundance of seed in my hand. And he was just like, "I trust you that much." And so for us to understand as stewards, we are entrusted. When you hire a new employee, you're like, yeah, go do that thing. And they're like, "Me? Really?" And you're like, "Yeah, I trust you. That's why I hired you." And so the Lord trusts you, that you who are listening who don't feel trustworthy or worthy of being stewards of what God is giving you and wants to give you more of. He's asking you to be a steward of the little so he can give you more and to be that example for other people. And so I just encourage people to really lean into the fact that God trusts you and that he wants to give you more in this process. And so I just see that for your all's movement, that he trusts you so much. He trusts you with hearts. He trusts you as the shepherd that you are, and that there's just going to be more spaces and places that you're going to get invitations to. And it isn't just about your city, but your city is going to be a representation for what can happen in more cities that are transformed.
Amen. Come on.
Receive, receive, receive. God is so good. Man, I've loved this time with you, brother. It's been so rich. I knew it would be. I can't wait to be with you and your bride in FounderCon in a couple of months, but I'm definitely going to have to come out to this homestead, and we'll add more kids to the worship session because my kiddos love to worship too.
Yeah, any open invitation, you come. Yeah,
I
be
love
awesome.
it. Any final words that you want to share with the Messenger Movement crew?
Man, Jesus is amazing.
Mm.
That's all I got.
Amen. 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 Let's make a hat. Jesus is amazing. I'm in for the
Amen.
billboard. Be blessed, brother. Thank you for being here. You guys tune in to all things Dr. Joshua Steinke. He's amazing. He's got a book on the shelves under Kingdom Commerce, and he's got all of these different initiatives. Ultimately, let's get together so we can worship anyway.
Let's do
Bye.
it.